today about application retirement. And so the agenda that we put together, first we'll talk about it in terms of the business case, why you want to consider retiring an application. We'll give you a brief overview of our product set, the Solix Enterprise Data Management Suite, or what we call EDMS. And then we'll walk you through our approach to application retirement using the EDMS, a couple of case studies, and then a wrap-up. So let me just jump right in. So what are the business drivers for application retirement? There's really several categories of business drivers. First being reduction of cost. Second being, and I'll cover each of these in a little more detail. Second being the need to consolidate applications. And the third being complying with regulations. So we have a quote from a Gartner analyst that says, on average, 10% of the applications in most companies' portfolios are candidates for retirement. Let's talk about reducing cost. So this is probably the biggest driver for application retirement. Companies have dozens of applications that they need to retire that are taking up parts of their budget.
Tough talent.
Sorry about that. So there are the cost of license and maintenance renewals, the cost of staff time, maintaining skill sets that may be obsolete, cost of hardware required to run the software, and the cost of power and cooling, data center floor space, cost of backing up the application and restoring it, and the drag on business this creates when users are having to access these applications on obsolescent hardware. Another thing we see is consolidation. So this is very common in many organizations right now. People have redundant applications that they've acquired over the years as a result of mergers or acquisitions. They've gone through a rationalization process for their portfolio and have decided to standardize on certain applications, or they're upgrading to a more modern set of applications. There are also a set of compliance reasons why people are considering retiring applications. Sarbanes-Oxley, HIPAA, FTC, FDA, there are a number of others as well. People want to keep the data, but retire the applications and make sure that data is available when they get the request from legal or what have you. Some of the things that happen that would cause you to want to come back to this data in the future would be customer requests, e-discovery requests, fulfilling warranty, just keeping track of your product history, or manufacturing records, or even HR records. So here's kind of what we see out there in terms of the current state of affairs. Enterprises, the initiative to retire applications is typically an enterprise level initiative. It's not something that is, sometimes it's taken on by departments, but typically it's an enterprise level initiative. We see numerous standalone applications and databases. We see a whole host of legacy platforms, from everything from mainframes, mini computers, departmental servers, servers, Unix servers, NT servers, etc. A lot of different types of data sources supporting those legacy applications, relational and non-relational. Sometimes even mainframe flat files. We see packaged and custom applications written in a variety of languages. And depending on the size of the organization, it's not uncommon to see hundreds or even thousands of these applications that are candidates for retirement. And the primary requirement that we're seeing is to have the data available even once the application is retired, so that it can be made available to end users for reporting and query, so that they can comply with regulatory and legal requirements down the road. So some of the typical requirements that we see, we've got to be able to support multiple storage devices, whether that's just something as simple as tape or our file system, or a content management platform, or a worm device, or a variety of others. We also see the need to control the security of who has access to the retired data. We also see a need to be able to manage the retention policy of the data that is being migrated or retired, and to provide reporting access. Excuse me. Provide reporting access to meet the various service levels. I'm going to talk a lot more about service levels for this migrated data as we move forward in the presentation. We also see the need to access this data via standard set of reporting tools. And some of the challenges that we see are how do you organize this data? Do you put it all in one location? And do you have unique reporting requirements for each application you retire? So let me now move into an overview of the SOLIX CDMS. So as I mentioned, EDMS stands for Enterprise Data Management Suite. This is a SOLIX product that we'll be talking about for a few minutes here. And our product is a comprehensive data management product. We're going to focus today primarily on application retirement, but we also offer other things like active database archiving, test data management, and data masking. Our product is a services architecture-based product. So at the core of the product are the four component services: archiving, retirement, test data management, and data masking. We have the ability to, through our data management services, to talk to a variety of different database types, right to a variety of different file systems. And we support both packaged applications and custom applications. Our product, as I mentioned, is a service architecture base. It's scalable, open, flexible, integrated, and extensible. And just to give you a sense of some of the customers that we have using the SOLIX CDMS on a variety of different applications and databases, this slide gives you that view, and I'll show you more customers at the end of the presentation. End of the presentation. Now let me get to the kind of the heart of the webinar today, which is how SOLIX approaches application retirement. So at a very high level, our approach, we have to do three things. So the first thing is we have to determine what kind of archive repository do you want to put your data into. And then we have to determine what are your data access requirements. And then we have to determine the appropriate data migration method. Let me start with the archive Are they going to be frequent, meaning that you're going to get several requests from your users, or if you are an end user, you're going to need to access this data on a daily or weekly basis? Or is it going to be a more infrequent use case where you're only going to need to get the data for some kind of special circumstance, like an e-discovery request, a warranty recall, a customer research project, something like that. So that's going to be a big determinant on the type of repository you want to select. Second is your security requirements, and then third, the cost considerations for operating the various types of repositories. On the next bullet, determining data access requirements, probably the most important factor here is how are we going to provide context for the migrated data once the application itself is retired. And by context, I mean, will the data be usable, understandable, and accessible once the application itself is gone? And next is, what level of predefined reports or inquiries will you need to provide to this data? Will the data need to be accessed by IT only, or by end users, or both? And what are the data access tools that you'll want to use to access the migrated data? And the third is, what is the method for data migration? One approach is bulk migration, where we take basically all of the data in the application, migrated. Next is an object level migration, where you might say, for a given application, I only want to take a particular type of data, particular business object out of that application and migrate it. And then you might also need to make a determination, are you going to bring all of the data or just selected data? And you'll actually see in one of our case studies where this last bullet came into play. So this slide gives you a high-level graphic of the approach that we take to application retirement. So on the left, you see a variety of legacy applications, and these could be custom applications, package applications, it could be mainframe applications. Out of these applications, we extract both the data and reports. Reports is something that we recommend before the final decommissioning of an application, that you run a series of reports and archive those reports in PDF format along with the data. So the Solix CDMS tool extracts the data out of the legacy applications and migrates it into one of the archive repositories. I'll talk more about those as we go through here. And as I mentioned, the retrieval service level will help determine which of the archive repositories that you might want to set up. And with our product, you are not limited to one. You can have several archive repositories, and depending upon the classification of the data based upon this data retrieval service level, can take the data to the appropriate repository. In the middle box, you'll see something that I call the Solix View Builder, and I'm going to cover that in a little more detail in the next couple of slides. But that's how we provide the context for this data after it's been migrated and once the application itself goes away. So the choices on the archive repository are either a relational database archive, a file server archive, or a cloud storage. And I'm going to cover each of those and talk about the pros and cons of and the operating characteristics as we go through the next slides. So that's the migration piece of application retirement. Probably more importantly, you want to know, okay, now that I've migrated the data, how am I going to access it? So our approach and philosophy is to, wherever possible, leverage your existing infrastructure investment and the existing tools that you have in your organization objects. It could be something like Oracle Discover or Crystal Reports, or something as simple as the Toad utility. And any business intelligence tool that supports ANSI SQL will be able to access the views that we've created. We also provide a basic set of reporting tools in our product, but most of our customers are going to use one of the business intelligence tools they already have, because that is the much less impact in terms of training users on the use of the tool. They already know how to do that. So, and as you can see, for the file system, file server archive, the data type options that we have are XML and CSV. And let me just mention cloud storage here. This is something that's relatively new, and it is something that we're getting more and more questions about. Basically, either of our repository options can be set up and administered as a cloud option. So we could set up a private cloud for your organization running a relational database archive, and accessing the data through that private cloud would be just like if the data were in your own data center. And some customers are considering doing this, going back to the business drivers for why you want to do application retirement or reducing costs. You can completely eliminate the need for infrastructure in your data center to store this data and still provide the level of security that you need and expect for this kind of data. So the features involved in the data migration, first is we can migrate data from any source application to any of the supported repositories. The next bullet talks about something called metadata, and metadata to us is just the knowledge about the data structures of the source application. So we can auto-populate this by connecting to those source data structures and create this metadata automatically. We can then do bulk migration for all of the tables or selected tables using the as-is table structures. Or we can migrate just specific business objects. And that might be appropriate if, for example, you've got an application that only has, or that has several business objects in it, but there's only one business object that you have interest in maintaining the data long term. Our objective with data migration, obviously, is to maintain integrity of the data as we migrate it, and that's absolutely critical for compliance reasons. Then we create the views, and I'll talk more about these on the next slide. That's how we deliver the context for this data, and we offer the multiple options for the archive repository. So I've mentioned this several times, the SOLIX View Builder, probably the most important part of the access side of the migration project. So what we do is we create business views for the migrated data using plain English names for both columns and tables. And that's, if any of you have worked with older legacy applications, or even some of the older package applications that were written in say 10 years ago or 15 years ago, you know that the databases, the data sources often use very cryptic table and column names. So imagine if you migrated that data, put it into a relational database archive, and then try to make sense of it a couple years down the road when you got a request from your legal team. The problem is that unless you had somebody that had expertise in that data structure, or you had a handy desk reference guide for the data model, it would be pretty hard to make sense of those cryptic names. So what our view View Builder does is to overlay table level views using plain English names for the tables and columns, so that when you connect to those views using a business intelligence tool, you have a much better chance of making sense of it and even potentially giving access to that data directly to an end user. We also then, on top of that, create object level views that join together key tables to define business objects. So, for example, if you had a invoice application or a receivables application, and you wanted to be able to reproduce invoices in the future, we would create a business object level view for the invoice that would join together all of the key tables that make up the invoice object. And that might include a customer table, an invoice header table, an invoice lines table, maybe the product master table, that sort of thing. So that when you access that business object view, you can very easily reproduce that invoice or whatever the report that you needed. So that's the Solix View Builder. And this next slide just gives you a couple of pictures of what that looks like. And for any of you that would like to get a demonstration of any of our product features, be sure to let us know and we can schedule that for you. Now let me shift gears and talk about your options on the repository side. So as I mentioned, we've got a couple of different options here, or categories of options. The first being a base archive. So the Solix CDMS supports a number of different database targets, in addition to being able to read from a variety of different data sources. So the supported databases include Oracle, MySQL, Microsoft SQL Server, DB2, etc. And these are set up so that you can query and report against them using your standard BI tools and access either the native tables or the Solix views that we create. You can, depending on the database you choose, you can leverage database-specific options, and each database has different options that you might consider. One that I've put on the slide here is the Oracle Advanced Compression option. Obviously, that is for the Oracle database. That particular one gives you the ability to reduce the amount of disk space required for this migrating data. And as I mentioned, we can support the archive repository in a hosted model or a private cloud. The file archive is a little different animal than the database archive. And the key reason you might want to select the file archive option is based upon that data retrieval service level that I talked about earlier. So if your service level is such that you can afford more time to turn around a data retrieval request, then you can potentially gain some benefits in terms of taking this data out to XML or CSV, putting it off on tape or optical media, some offline storage, and really reduce your operating costs. The downside to that, obviously, is it will take longer to retrieve that data and turn around the report or the inquiry or whatever you have to do when that time comes. So we can also support content management repositories like Oracle's UCM. One of the things to keep in mind here is that the file archive repository, particularly if you choose the XML option, generally results in increased storage requirements, which is why you might want to consider, if you go this route, taking it offline to tape or optical media. And that's just a nature of when you write out to XML, the data tends to expand compared to the way it was organized in its source database. You do have the option in the file archive mode to about something we call application awareness. Solix really got our start as an archiving company, helping companies do active archiving for production applications. And we've built a set of knowledge bases for a number of out-of-the-box package applications that include Oracle E-Business Suite, PeopleSoft, JD Edwards, Siebel, Bond, etc. And this application awareness that we developed for the archiving market can also come into play as we look at the use case for application retirement. And believe it or not, because of all the different business drivers, we do see people retiring some of these more modern packaged applications. In fact, one of our case studies will be a company that's retiring out of an Oracle E-Business Suite application, another out of a JD Edwards application. So this out-of-the-box knowledge that we have from the archiving market allows us to identify the transactional business objects very efficiently and allow us to use that if you want to selectively move just parts of the application. We also allow bulk migration of these transaction business objects, both into the relational tables or XML or CSV. And then probably the more common approach that we see is table structure migration, where we use our bulk migration feature and migrate into a relational table, XML or CSV, and move all of the data in the application for later use and data access. I've talked about the use of your business intelligence tool. Our philosophy here was not to do anything that required you to use a different tool. You certainly can use the Solix reporting tool, but most of our customers have one or more business intelligence tools. The slide here shows the use of business objects, but as I mentioned before, any anti-SQL compatible business intelligence tools can access the data that we migrate for you. A couple case studies. The first is a case where we retired a JD Edwards application. It's a company in the aeronautical domain, and we basically migrated older JDE data from a DB2 database into an Oracle archive repository, and we took data out of actually multiple instances and moved it into a single repository, and that allowed them to have a single database repository for their migrated data, which allowed them to reduce their operational and maintenance costs and provide very quick turnaround for reports, and allowed them to synchronize with their other ERP databases. So that was one case study. Another one that's actually going on right now is a company that is involved in a divestiture. So a particular division is being spun off, and this is an oil services industry. And the division that's being spun off needs to take all the data out of their Oracle E-Business Suite with them. They're going to be using another application in their new business, but they need to retire the data and still have access to it in its original form for compliance reasons. So we're able to use the ability within our bulk data migration to identify just the data that belong to the division that's being spun off, and protect the data from the company that they've been spun off from. So the benefits that they're hoping to achieve here are the divested division will have access to their data for use in future data warehouses or other places they course, we can help you reduce your costs by leveraging your existing infrastructure, storage, business intelligence tools, databases, etc. We don't require any proprietary formats, any proprietary hardware. We really are all about helping you leverage your existing infrastructure, and we provide a systematic approach to help you manage this whole process of your application portfolio as you prune the older applications and retire them. We use application metadata and out-of-the-box application awareness. So if you do have a prepackaged application that you need to retire, this out-of-the-box knowledge can really help accelerate that process for you. We support a heterogeneous database infrastructure both on the source side and on the target side. So virtually any data source that you have in your legacy application portfolio, we can connect to. I don't think I covered this, but basically any data source we can pull data from as long as there's a JDBC driver available for it, and we've found JDBC drivers, we've used JDBC drivers for virtually all types of applications, from mainframe applications, mini computer applications, to more modern relational database applications. And if there's a particular application that type of driver doesn't exist, we still have a way to extract the data and move it for you. It just takes a little more time. And we support both custom applications and customized prepackaged applications. So if you have older custom applications that need to be retired, we can certainly do that using our auto-populate feature. We'll build the metadata knowledge base. And then, of course, with the prepackaged applications, we already know that knowledge base, so we're in good shape there. We also can, in addition to migrating the data out of the applications, we can migrate the reports that you should run before you do your final decommissioning of the application, and put that in the repository along with the data to provide additional context for the data after it's been migrated. We support multiple target archives and repositories and data formats. So the relational database types, all the different databases that are supported, as well as the file system options with XML and CSV. And then lastly, we offer a couple different ways to actually buy the software. So like any software, you can buy a license, and that works the same as for the other software products that you're familiar with. We also offer an on-demand service, and this particularly is appealing for application retirement because you can pay for the data that you migrate, and sort of like if you think about the analogy to the moving industry, the furniture moving industry, it's kind of like instead of buying a truck, you can actually rent the truck from us, have us move the data for you, set up your furniture in your new location, and then we're gone and you're done with us, and you have access to all of your data. So that particular option seems to be very appealing for this particular use case. And also, a reason you might consider working with Solix is we have a very strategic partnership with Oracle, and particularly if you're an Oracle database shop, Oracle technology user, this could be of value to you. So we have, we believe, more technology integrations with Oracle than any of our competitors. We're the only archiving vendor that has been embedded into an Oracle application. In this case, we were embedded into the Oracle vertical industry application integrations at the database level that that leverage some of the latest and greatest database technologies provided by Oracle. So we think that for those of you that are Oracle shops, this level of partnership can definitely help deliver a higher return on investment for you. Just a quick look at some of our customers. We're not a particularly vertical market application. Our application and services work across a variety of industries and both public and private sector. So you can see we've got manufacturing, we've got financial services, we have public sector, both defense and non-defense, and our whole approach with our customer base is to make sure that every single one of our customers is successful in using our product, and so that's really our focus as a company. And lastly, here's a list of some of our strategic partners and resellers. So we're partnering with a number of software companies like Oracle, Voltage Security, a number of hardware providers, NetApp, Sun, IBM, EMC, Hitachi, a number of system integrators and resellers, and consulting companies. So let me stop there, and I think we have about 15 minutes left for discussion and questions.